Just answering questions with WAPcheck. 3 questions. Here we go. Federal government offers a $7,500 tax credit for electric vehicle buyers and others as well, by the way. And Tesla is one of the beneficiaries in a way from this. The company Tesla also received a $465 million 2010 U.S. Department of Energy preferential loan that they paid off by 2013. Now, those are obviously things you and I can't get, and that makes them subsidized. That's okay, but it's kind of, well, you decide. Next, since 2003, SpaceX has signed $15.3 billion in awarded contracts launching U.S. military satellites and NASA missions. That's a 20-year period of time. Because NASA backed the SpaceX critical contract that they needed in 2008 not to go out of business, Elon Musk's spacefaring dreams lived on. That all that combined means that they're definitively benefiting from the U.S. government. And some might argue, I'm actually being straight-faced about this for a good reason, that Elon Musk complaining that NPR is government-funded and therefore not independent. Does he do the same thing about the BBC? That's a better comparison than this. But let's move on. Next, someone said, why are you saying that SpaceX is a private venture? It is a private venture that's receiving help from the government. It's not government controlled. It's in a way entangled, but not directly controlled by the U.S. government. And I want to point out that when it comes to taxes, people in the U.S. government that represent us are perfectly okay with throwing money away as long as it benefits someone rich and powerful that they can get a kickback from. If it benefits NASA, NASA doesn't give them bribe money. And there's a certain variety of politician that teaches people to hate on NASA, but they don't hate on Tesla, they don't hate on SpaceX. Just pointing it out. But do I believe that this is inaccurate, me saying that it's a private space exploration? It's primarily controlled by a private individual, even if he does, gives out stock options or something. It's still essentially mostly privately controlled. And this has benefited everybody because it can be cheaper. Some things are better done by just having a federal government agency just do it. Like me pointing out that NASA gets paid a ridiculously tiny amount of money to maintain stuff that people constantly claim is costing us billions of dollars when it's not ever. Like one project someone complained about was actually costing us per year $10,000. People asked the person about their do you know that your taxes list how much you waste on motel rooms? You waste more on motel rooms than they do maintaining the Voyager probe. He didn't like that. They kept doing that to him until he shut the hell up. Again, there are people out there who hate NASA. So soft pedaling it through, SpaceX and Tesla, they're okay with. I don't give a damn as long as we get progress out of it. Next, am I missing something in regards to how the U.S. voting system works, or was it just misspoken that a majority of people voted against Trump, yet he won? No, it's not. The U.S. government elects its president by 2 methods. One of them is a direct vote by the population, which is currently being attacked by a group of people that know that they will lose. Again, whoever's in power at the time doesn't want anybody voting, so they discourage it or literally make it impossible to have happen. But anyway, we use a representative government where the states have representatives they send to the federal government, and they represent the people's will, supposedly. And of course they don't. They ignore us. But also, same statement, there is a group of individuals that are supposed to vote for us. Each state gets a certain fixed number of votes as a state. And each state gets a certain number of individuals that represent, supposedly, the will of the people, being temporarily put in place just for the election to represent a block of people who voted. And some states make it to where if the state goes totally for, let's say, the Republican, then all of the votes in the state go for the Republican. Or they do a ratio or whatever. But all the states now use a system where the representatives that each state puts in place to vote on behalf of the population have to vote a certain way, and they're not allowed to change it. And the states, all states, up until this new election, at least currently, decide what the vote will be for the state through these representatives that are supposed to, at one time, literally carry the bundle of ballots. It's an old story. They require them to represent it accurately. And they get picked by the state. You can't pick your own. Now, when Donald Trump ran against Hillary Clinton got more votes than Donald Trump. But the states he won had more electoral college votes, just barely. It was such a close race that this is done, at least the excuse is that states with a small population should still have an effect on the outcome. And states with lots of people shouldn't be able to have a lot of power just because, quote, the majority of the population doesn't want Donald Trump to be president. Now, I object to this. I'm kind of leaking that. But I also can't come up with a way to make it more fair other than to make it to where the states have no control over the voting at all, other than they are supposed to manage it and make sure the votes are counted. And it should be a raw vote by the entire population. And it should not be broken down by saying somebody won a state or a district or a county. It should be a raw vote, the total vote, which means if you live in a state with a small population, you might think your vote doesn't count. But then you can also say, my vote counts just as much as Barack Obama's and every other president that has been in place and the person running. They don't get more power. We currently have a lopsided system where some states have more power than others, and they don't want to lose that. And other states don't have as much power. And obviously they want more power, but they don't want, none of them seem to want even Steven power. Article 2 of the Constitution and the 12th Amendment refer to electors. The Founding Fathers settled on this as a compromise between two methods. Election of the president by just having Congress vote. They would just pick the next president, which means it would just end up being political party-based, which means it would be a deadlock. Also at the time, you could end up with a Democratic president and a vice president that was Republican and bitter enemies, and potentially one would kill the other. I mean, that was how the system was originally done. So the Founding Fathers weren't too smart about this. The other method was a direct vote by the population. The idea here is that they would temporarily, right before the election, count up all the population based on census, that it's done based on the 10-year census. I forgot to mention that. And those slate of electors would be told, your vote will be for Hillary or your vote will be for Donald Trump. And if they're not faithless, if they don't violate that order, because they're being ordered by the state decides how the vote goes. If they don't violate the rules, everything's fine. Okay, here's the problem. We had faithless electors. We had people who were told, please vote against Trump. He's dangerous. Defy the law. We also had, actual interference with people voting, so the vote counts were screwed up. And then the people who interfered accused the opposite side of doing it over and over again. And when Donald Trump lost this last time, he and a bunch of other people tried to do a soft coup d'etat by changing out the electors and arguing that that was more valid by just deciding he won. Because each state can decide to overrule the voters, or at least they thought they could. And now every state has adopted rules where they can overrule the voters. They can ignore the voters and just have their state Senate and House committee or whatever the hell they got, whatever the equivalent is, just have them vote and totally take away the right of the people to overrule their leaders. That's why I approve only of mass voting, because politicians accumulate power and then do everything they can to keep from losing it, which means they gerrymander things, they arrange the districts so they can't lose an election, and they do things like change the laws after they win, and then right before they're going to lose, change the laws again so that they encumber the next group and make it impossible to change out. Changing any of this would require, you'd have to amend the Constitution. You'd have to have 2/3 majority in both House and Congress to do this, and then it would have to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. The term electoral college doesn't appear in the Constitution, so it's not a constitutional thing. And again, this was a compromise, avoiding mob rule because the politicians did not want to lose power all the time. Now, the other reason for this, and this is actually something you might not know about, is originally the vote had to be transported from each state by damn near carrier pigeon. They had to travel sometimes weeks or months to get to where it could be counted. So having a representative do it anyway is pretty much part of it. That was something that was brought up. I used to think that was the only origin for it, but really this was thought out as a way to get rid of populism. Next, I made a video about something called herobrine. Herobrine is a pseudo character in the video game Minecraft. This is really off the cuff. And I did a video explaining that this character is probably caused as a one-shot occurrence of seeing something in the game that was a glitch in the game. And what it is it's a standard character for the human NPC bot that would run around if you turned it loose. And also for the character you're playing. And if its color palette got screwed up, the eyes would turn white. Now, the way I check that is it has a black dot for the eye's pupil, and all you have to do is turn it white. And I looked for, is that color repeated anywhere else in the character? And it isn't. It's a unique color, and the way I checked on it, it's actually pretty simple, is I copied the player model character into Paint. Then I right-clicked the color in the eye, in the pupil, when I sampled it, so that would become the background color if I moved anything. Then I went over to the right side, opening it up bigger, and on that right side it turned the same color as the black eyes. I then poured red into it, then cut and paste, then I grabbed the character over here with transparency enabled, put it over, and found out that the eyes would at that point turn red. What that meant was that was a unique color in the palette. All it required was that color of the palette to be cycled accidentally or wrong, because the default color for the player model, if one of the colors doesn't render, is to be see-through. And this was seen in fog, so it was seeing the fog through the character. This is a common occurrence in video games. We just call it glitching or ghosting or whatever. Person asks, when Anonymous remade this edition of Minecraft, Herobrine's eyes was an error. It was an error, and I don't think it was Anonymous that did it. An Anonymous posted the image, but that was just somebody who wasn't posting with their name or identity. They were just posting anonymously, just without having to sign in. Why red? It's because that was the color I used as the background color. If you're going to do one of these tests, you got to make sure it's a color that's not on the screen at all. So you end up doing things like pink, purple, white, yellow, red, green, blue, some color that isn't in the image. And there was a blue and there was other colors. I mean, you needed it to be something pretty extreme. And what does this all mean? Well, I've now explained it. I obviously did a poor job in the video. I might redo it. Excuse my ignorance, another question. What image editing program are you using? In that case, I was using Paint, but any program that will support a transparency effect and allow you to set a new one on the fly while you're doing editing is it. And if you ask nice, I'll go ahead and just redo the video. I didn't make it clear, but anyway, the point is that was a unique color, and it was the only color that changed in the character. Therefore, it probably became an alpha channel or see-through color, the color that's used as default, so it doesn't draw the rest of the pattern on the outside of the character. That's how you get see-through parts of the cubes that represent the leaves and the trees. They're just a transparency mode or an alpha channel. It's just designated as being background. And the most likely cause of this error was that the fog routine was screwing up in the game engine. And an anonymous person posted it on the internet, and it's called herobrine for some reason. I actually don't remember why it's called herobrine. So anyway, to review, we have a screwed up electoral college system that ignores the popular vote at its own terror. Next, herobrine was probably an error caused by a video game engine. Next, Elon Musk has benefited a great deal from the federal government and doesn't seem to know which side his butter's breaded on, or bread's buttered on, or I don't do euphemisms very well. So anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And bread's buttered on. If anybody thinks that I really script these well, I think I've proven I can't.